Hi students. So today we're going to talk about this learning target, explain the function of character. And before we talk about the function of the character, we really need to talk about what the character is like in the first place. And so character we can divide up into two big pieces, right? We have their external characteristics, which are things like their appearance. So stick figure man or stick figure person has curly hair, so that would be their appearance. Clothing or style. So some characters have really distinctive style, and that tells us something about how they want people to perceive them. So if somebody's dressed in a really nice suit that is beautifully tailored and perfect, and shiny shoes and a beautiful hat, you might have one idea of them versus somebody who's dressed in ripped jeans and an old leather jacket, right? It doesn't mean that one character is better or worse. It just means that they have a different way that they want to present themselves to the world. And that is something that we should think about. Sometimes their profession, right? I think of that as an external characteristic. So if they're a student, if they're a biologist, if they're a writer, these are different professions. They chose them for different reasons. It could give us some insights to who they are, but usually external characteristics don't tell us too terribly much about what the person is actually like. So then we get to the second half, which is which are the internal characteristics. And those are things like their character or personality. And rarely are we told what those are, at least once we get to like grown-up books, right? When we read kids' books, yes, we might be told that somebody is super brave. But when we get to more adult books, normally we have to put the pieces together ourselves, which is fine. We're very good at that. That's not a problem. Their feelings, right? And this is another thing that we usually have to infer. Sometimes the author will tell us, but usually they'll give us clues so that we can figure it out. Like if a character is crying, we can assume that they're probably sad. Maybe they're super happy. It's sometimes hard to tell, but we would know from context, right? And then the last one is their motivation. So why are they doing the things that they're doing? And that one's kind of a hard one that we usually need some time to infer. We can't just guess that from the very beginning of the book, usually. Sometimes we're given a clear motivation, but oftentimes it's something we have to figure out. So I've made a really short list. So if you've ever been in my classroom, you know that there's a wall full of words to describe character, and we're not in my classroom. So I made you a really short list that I think will be really helpful when we read Kindred. And maybe we can add to this as we go on, and we'll create a sort of digital word wall. Okay, so character. So what I want us to do is we're going to start thinking about character, right? And in this novel, we have a couple of main characters in different places and times. But today I really want to focus on Dana, who's our protagonist. She's our hero of this story. And so when we are talking about character and recognizing character, we normally focus on their actions. So what do they do? Their dialogue, what do they say? So their actions, and actually, I'm going to add to that, and reactions, right? Because I think sometimes their reactions can be more telling. And then dialogue, what do they say? And then finally, and this is something that we always take with like 5 grains of salt, what do other people say about them? Because we know that other characters in the story might have bias. So we want to be aware of that when we're reading. Just like in real life, right? If somebody tells you, oh, that person is so annoying, I hate them, you might be like, well, do I trust your opinion or not? So it's the same thing in a book. If a character tells you something about another character, you might agree with them, but you also might not, because you might have evidence that tells you something different, right? So anyway, so I chose 2 quotes from the first 2 chapters, the prologue and the river, and just to get a sense of who Dana is. So the first one is from when she's from the prologue and she's in the hospital. She seems to have lost part of her arm, which is wild. And she's talking to her husband, and he tells her that they had to cut off her arm above the elbow. And her response is really interesting to me. She says, I know, I'm just trying to get used to it. I opened my eyes and looked at him. Then I remembered my earlier visitors. Have I gotten you in trouble? So the police had visited her, right? And I just think it's so interesting that she's lost a chunk of her arm and she doesn't seem to be freaked out about that. Like, that isn't what freaks her out. She's fine. She's like, I'll get used to it. It's weird, but I'll get used to it. Are you in trouble? So it seems like she is very, she's really tough. So Dana seems like someone tough. Right? Despite undergoing a serious injury. She seems more concerned about her husband's safety. And safety, there we go. And I just wonder, I mean, this also just leaves me wondering, since the beginning of the book, like, why is she so stoic about this? If I lost part of my arm, I would be freaking out. So I'm just going to say that. Why is she so stoic? Maybe we'll get an answer. Maybe we won't. We just have to figure out. So this is something that she says. And then I'm just inferring. What do I think she's like, right? So I said she's tough and she seems kind of stoic. Okay, now let's look at another one. So this is when, this is in the river, and this is right after she gets dizzy and sort of blacks out, and she finds herself on the bank of this river, and there's a kid drowning, right? And she has no idea what happened to herself, but she says, I reacted to the child in trouble. Later, I could ask questions, try to find out where I was, what had happened. And to me, this is wild. She's just had this like crazy blackout, and she's less concerned for herself, and once again she's going to like save the kid. So that's making me think that not only is Dana is courageous because she goes to save the kid. Can I not spell? How do you spell courageous? I think that's correct. Because she goes to save the kid. I'm also getting more and more evidence that Dana seems somewhat selfless. She seems to be more concerned for other people's safety. And that's all I know right now. And that's okay that that's all I know right now, because we've just started reading the book. Anyway, so what I'm going to ask you to do is do the same thing. You're reading the next chapter, which is, I think, called The Fire. And you're going to do this 3 times, not just 2. And you're going to look at what are their actions or reactions, what do they say, so what kind of dialogue do we see, and then what do other people say about them, and do you want to trust it? Sometimes what people say about other people tells us more about that person than the person they're talking about. So you're going to look at those things, and then you're going to think, like, what does that tell us about their character? What kind of a person are they? Are they courageous? Are they selfless? Okay? All right. See you later.